Get in on the action and make your bet with Sports Interaction. The F1 schedule is heating up. Will you go with the reliable and Max Verstappen, or take your chance with a potential surprise? Download the app in Ontario. Use the QR code you see at the bottom of your screen somewhere, or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 18 plus, please play responsibly. Welcome to Nailing the Apex, everyone. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head on over to Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts as well. Rate reviews. It really helps us grow the show. You can follow me on social media at Tim Hauraney. It's emergency pod time. As breaking news, Aston Martin F1 team and Honda HRC have agreed to enter into a works partnership deal for the 2026 F1 season. I just got done speaking with Aston Martin boss Martin Whitmarsh and president of Honda Racing, Mr. Koji Watanabe, and here's what I've come away with: some juicy little details. And we'll start with HRC, which is the Honda Racing Corporation. They will design, develop the power unit, and supply it to the Aston Martin team, while Aston Martin they'll design, develop, manufacture the chassis, as well as handle team management. So for Aston Martin, they've got a lot going for them right now. They got a new factory. They're going to have, which is state-of-the-art, they're going to have a new wind tunnel coming online here very soon in the next... I would say the factory is going to be up and running in the next few months here. As for the wind tunnel, that's still a bit in development with no date on its release just yet. They have a strong car, which right now is kicking some ass. It's a team on the rise. They're building their infrastructure. They're adding to the team more personnel. This thing just keeps growing and growing and growing, and the team will be known as Aston Martin Honda, from my understanding. So this is great for the team. It's also great for Honda. But we'll take a quick overview of the 2026 F1 power unit regulations, so you can have an understanding as to how this is all going to work when it comes to the power units. So in 2014, there was a major overhaul with the engines, and they turned into the V6 turbo hybrid engines, battery assist, MGUH, MGUK, which we'll explain in a minute. And yeah, it turned into these turbo hybrid beasts of an engine. Not particularly the sound, but in terms of the sheer power and output, extremely fast. 2026 is a new engine regulation that is on the horizon here. And it's important for Formula One. It's important for the teams because in the past, there's never really been a lot of OEMs, right? So original engine manufacturers, never really been a lot. But now, F1's on the rise. And with it, they've developed into pumping out and making sure that the message of, net zero carbon by 2030, synthetic fuels by 2026. All of this has really resonated with everyone within the auto manufacturing space. And I don't blame them either. It's the technology that F1 is working on right now is absolutely incredible. And the stuff that we're going to see here in the next few years is going to be mind-blowing. So as for the power units for 2026... they'll be powered by 100% sustainable and synthetic fuels. So that could come from a number of different places: biomass, direct air capture, so carbon capture, where they suck carbon out of the air, so CO2. They infuse it with H2O, and it creates a type of fuel that's basically like a drop in and go. So you just pump it into your car at a fuel station, and it should work automatically, and away you go. And so that is going to be important for auto manufacturers moving forward, because you're not going to be able to clear off, millions and millions and millions and hundreds of millions of internal combustion engine cars just off the road. You're just not going to be able to do it. So there needs to be another form. This is where F1 is stepping in with the synthetic fuels and all of the resources going into it. Battery output for the 2026 power unit increases. So the current power unit is a 80-20 engine and battery. So it's about 120 kilowatts, I believe, is what they're using for battery power at the moment. They're going to move that in 2026. It will be even, so it'll be 50-50. So 50% of the power is coming from the V6 internal combustion engine, and the other 50% is coming from the energy recovery systems, which will increase to 350 kilowatts. The MGUH, which is the motor generator unit heat. So this component essentially grabs energy from heat. So we'll use the turbo as an example. The turbo that spools within an engine that generates heat. And this system gathers energy from it, pumps it into the battery, and it's used part of the hybrid system. It's a very expensive component. A lot of F1 teams really did want to do away with it for these regulations because it was so expensive, and it wasn't really much relevant to them anymore. Where the MGUK, that remains. That's kinetic energy. So heat from the brake discs, for an example, you can generate battery power from that. So when the driver pumps his foot onto the brake to slow the car down, that's kinetic energy getting recovered, shoved into the battery, which then again gets pumped into the V6 turbo engine, and away you go. So OEMs and teams that are teamed up, partnered, or ready for the 2026 F1 season, we have Ferrari, Audi, which is doing a deal with Sauber. It's pretty much done. Mercedes, Alpine, which is Renault, Red Bull, Ford. So that announcement came out, I believe it was in February we were on that. Now Aston Martin and Honda. I assume Haas is with Ferrari. Williams, I assume they're going to be with Mercedes. Andretti Global, if they're able to get into Formula One. Alpine and Renault, I'm assuming. AlphaTauri, I assume they are going to be with Ford as well. So I got to sit down and speak with F1 team boss, or Aston Martin team boss, Martin Whitmarsh, because I wanted to get an understanding as to, when talks had started. I mean, there'd been a lot of reports out there flying around about, potential between Aston Martin and Honda. So Whitmarsh, when I spoke with him on, on Tuesday? It's late Tuesday evening. We're taping this because I just broke the news. But I spoke with Martin earlier on Tuesday. He was in Tokyo when we chatted. He's worked with Honda before in the past. And this is the guy that is basically the top dog at the Aston Martin F1 team, just under Lawrence Stroll. And he has worked with Honda before in the past. His first time actually working with Honda, he told me, was back in 1989. He was also involved in bringing Honda back into F1 10 years ago as well. But he wasn't there to work with them when they arrived in F1. And we also know what happened with the Honda-McLaren relationship, the fallout there, and Honda moving to Red Bull, and then eventually winning a championship with Red Bull in 2021. So he told me he found out about Honda having registered to be a power unit supplier for the 2026 season back in November, I believe it was, and dialed them up, said it only took a few weeks for the conversations to really kick in and for them to start, coming closer to a deal. I did speak also with Koji Watanabe, so president of Honda Racing Corporation. He did explain to me that they actually had multiple conversations with other teams, but felt that Aston Martin was the best fit for them. They visited the facility, they took a tour, they visited the facility in Silverstone, so they saw the massive investment that Lawrence was putting into the team and the facilities and thought that this was a team that is very serious to challenge for a championship. Now, Mercedes also plays a tiny bit of a role in this, but not like a huge role in how Honda kind of came on board. So, obviously Mercedes provides, engines and components to some of the teams on the grid. One of those teams is Aston Martin. And their partnership will come to an end at the conclusion of the 2025 season. So, at the moment, Aston Martin really enjoys their relationship with Mercedes, and they feel they get a lot of benefit out of it. I spoke with Dan Fallows about this, who also works for Aston Martin, during the Miami Grand Prix, and he explained that they are so happy with what they're getting from Mercedes, he really has nothing to complain about. So what they get the engine, so the power unit from Mercedes. At the same time, they get rear suspension, but they also get gearbox housing, etc. Essentially, it's basically the whole rear end of the car. And for a Formula One team, I mean, that's great to kind of get started with something like that. But if you want to go and fight for a championship, it's not necessarily good to be linked up with another power unit supplier that is also handing you over other items for your car. So Whitmarsh did explain to me that they will need to build out of their own components. So the partnership with Mercedes, like I said, that's going to end in 2026. But for the team to win, I think that means beating their existing partners. But when you're sitting out, to do that, and if you're relying on their technology and components and trying to beat them, it becomes a very difficult situation, like I had explained earlier. Whitmarsh did, tell me something interesting. He did touch on the wind tunnel. And Aston Martin currently uses Mercedes' wind tunnel until theirs is up and running. But their use of that wind tunnel is very restricted for many reasons that are apart from the regulations. So I'm assuming it could be the testing time. So when are they able to, get in there and start working? Could it be differing hours of the day? Transporting your materials over can also be a challenge. It's better to have everything kind of on site. So building that wind tunnel for them is crucial. So the team has had to make a big commitment in technology and development to develop things quicker and faster and get it to the car so they can be competitive right away and get good turnover really fast. So it won't be easy for them to make the switch, because they're really going to have to redevelop this car. I mean, they have a great baseline at the moment that they can build upon for the next few seasons, where this car could potentially start winning races. Could be this season, but could definitely be next season, and then the season after that as well. But then once you get into this new regulation, you're going to have to start looking at different ways of doing your rear end and how are you going to package things. And that may change a bit of your aero philosophy. So there's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to come out of Aston Martin to make sure that they're staying ahead of the curve. So when they arrive in 2026, the car is competitive, very competitive. Now, Fernando Alonso was a conversation that did come up with the folks at Honda and the folks at Aston Martin during our conversations earlier today. Alonso has had a fallout with Honda in the past over team radio explanations. I can't remember. I believe he called it like a GP2 engine at one point when he was with McLaren. He was extremely frustrated during that race. I do remember it. And so that relationship between Alonso and Honda was pretty rocky, and it's been very rocky for a while. Koji Watanabe, president of Honda Racing Corporation, did tell us that there were times in the past that they had their difficulties with him, but they do recognize that Alonso is a very outstanding driver. And as for Honda, they respect him, and of course it's up to the team to decide, the drivers that they're going to want on this team. But they did say if he is going to be selected, they would welcome him. And then Whitmarsh also followed up and confirmed that Honda would not oppose having him on at the team, and that everyone would be delighted to have Fernando Alonso back if he's still racing in 2026. And I mean, who knows? The guy's absolutely tearing it up right now. So he could very well be back. I mean, who knows, right? This is Formula One. So why did Honda come back to F1 for the 2026 season? Obviously, they are back right now in a capacity with Red Bull. And for 2026, though, this is going to be, full works engine deal here. They're going to have to head back to the dynos. They're going to have to really start digging in with R&D and getting an understanding of what this new lightweight, smaller, more powerful engine is going to look like, and how competitive is it going to be. I think, in the past, Honda, they decided to leave Formula One, and the focus for them was on carbon neutral activities. But they've since, walked it all back. Obviously, coming back with Red Bull kind of just shows that, obviously. I think one of the key reasons for their decision was F1's commitment to sustainable racing, or having a sustainable racing series, which is in line with the direction that Honda was aiming towards in terms of their carbon neutrality. I think also the increased electrification component with the Formula One cars for 2026 with the power unit, that will be also featured. I think the 50-50 power unit output from the ICE, so the internal combustion engine, and the battery technology was very important for them, because the technology that they will build for the power units, I think they're going to be able to really use a lot of that in their road-going vehicles, and I think it's just extremely important for them and their road-going vehicles to potentially launch flagship sports car models for Honda brands. And so I think that's going to be very, very important for them. And so why not just go and compete in Formula One, learn as much as you can, and see what happens. And I think they're also really interested in working with sustainable fuels for their road cars as well. Like I had said, there's just way too many cars on the road for them to just do away with all the internal combustion engines. So it's been an interesting day. It's been a long day. I think this is great for Aston Martin. I'm extremely excited for them. Extremely excited for Honda. I love to see Honda competing in Formula One. It reminds me of the days of Senna and Prost and their battles driving the McLarens. And yeah, you got to love the Honda badge too. It's pretty cool. And obviously Honda supporting IndyCar for as long as they have at the same time. I just think this is a really great day for motorsports and for Formula One in particular. And to see all of these OEMs that are coming back to F1, it's really important. And I can't stress it enough that, if we go back, back to, whatever, 2015, maybe, barely any engine manufacturers competing in Formula One, dire times. And now look at it. It just shows the health and the growth of Formula One. Be interesting to see what happens with Fernando, what his decisions are in the coming future. Can he win a championship at Aston Martin before Honda gets there? I mean, the direction that Aston Martin's going in, I could definitely see it. They're extremely competitive. And it's going to be exciting to see them at Monaco, because I think Aston Martin's going to be very competitive in Monaco. They will be having some big upgrades coming to the car too, and they should have those on the car before Canada. But we will have more on the Monaco Grand Prix build-up on Thursday. I'll be joined by a special guest, won't ruin it, on here. But until then, thanks everyone for watching and listening. Really appreciate it. Head on over to Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts. Write a review. Give us a rating on there as well. We really appreciate it. Head on over to social media. Give me a follow at Tim Hauraney. Shoot me a message if you've got any questions. Do my best to answer all that on Twitter or slide into the DMs because they are open. And we'll talk to everybody in a few days' time.